I'm very grateful of this opportunity to share our 15 years experience on multifunctional field margins. And this you will see resonate with many of the things that we have been listening and discussing since this morning. So, if you want to grow a crop, one of the things that you are going to do is to try to avoid any sort of competition from weeds, from pests. And while in the short term this is supporting your production, in the long run clearly is reducing the quality of your ecosystem. So 15 years ago, we have seen an opportunity to reverse a little bit this trend on farm by using the less productive and marginal land that, according to the statistics, is present basically in all the farms. It's around the 5% of all the farms. And so we have taken this initiative of supporting farmers to use this less productive and marginal land to grow what we call a biodiversity crop. We call it a crop because we really want the farmer to manage it as a crop, but using scientific protocols that are referring to the last probably 20 years of knowledge and experience, and often to use also seed mixtures that have been selected by conservation experts at local level. And so, I mean, we have basically created some small ecological focus areas in all the farms that are working with us. And we have helped the farmers really to not only develop these, but where possible to connect this in the landscape with support of the local authorities. Because, again, another thing that we have realized is that our tiny investment on the farm is nothing compared to the big advantage that we can extract from connectivity. We often say that we are afraid that species and species may be endangered, but one element that can avoid the risk is the connectivity, is the support that we can give to species to continue their evolution in the landscape. So by putting together all this small investment, we believe we can have a very good also adaptation and mitigation strategy. So why do we call them multifunctional? We call them multifunctionals because we have also discovered that while our original intent was to recreate an habitat that is disappearing on the farm, in reality these ecological infrastructures are very helpful for many other objectives. They are extremely helpful to prevent runoff, to reduce soil erosion, to protect water bodies. And we believe more and more they can be used in a very creative ways. For example, recently in China, we have supported the local extension services in helping farmers to develop these field margins. But with an additional element, we have asked them to include in the field margins some cash crops for the farmers so that they can sell some species, this cash crop on the market and also make their income more stable. Or in Latin America, our field margins are not about beautiful wildflowers, but perhaps trees that are protecting water courses and that include nurseries that are managed directly by the local rural community, again as another source of income. So we try, where possible, to try to expand the boundaries of our project to include as much as we can additional economic and social benefits. And I mean, one element that we also have realized is that compared to many different other solutions, compared to the set-aside, for example, this managed area has the ability to produce more in terms of biodiversity and attract more different species. So we believe this is really a simple and pragmatic solution for many farmers. What is our role in all this? Clearly, we don't own any land, and we are only rarely able to make all the assessments and all the implementation on these farms. The majority of the work is carried out by the farmer directly. And where we help is in knowledge transfer, in helping them with the diagnostic tools to assess what sort of solution is the best for them. But also we can help them to identify the conservation experts that can provide them with the seeds of local biodiversity. And often we also help with management, with big extensions. And we have developed, together with experts, and really based on all the available literature, a protocol that can help farmers to do something that is really scientific and really based on the results of several different studies that are available. This means that we don't need to monitor the actual effects in each farm. I mean, we know that on average, that investment of the farmer will produce the effects and the benefits that are already described in literature. And why this is a benefit? Because on average we have calculated that the implementation of field margins in the world costs more or less $100 per hectare, while a proper monitoring costs $20,000 per hectare. So we don't believe it's worth really to do a systematic monitoring of all the investments, but we believe it makes sense to use the same amount of money to invest in new ecological infrastructure, so to multiply the project. A few considerations about the sites. I mean, clearly, this is a very versatile infrastructure that can be used in several different ways. If you are farming a vineyard, probably you are more interested in avoiding soil erosion and reducing also the runoff and the potential contamination of the environment around. And perhaps you also want to attract some people in your vineyard to sell your wine, and you would like to have beautiful wild flowers on all the steps. So clearly you are looking at something that can reinforce the steps of your vineyard, and at the same time you're looking at something that can inspire the customers about the terroir, about the quality of what you're doing. So you can adapt it to this, or if you are growing olives, perhaps, I mean, it's not really effective for you to create field margins, but it's more effective to have patches in between the trees where you can grow again the same biodiversity. And we have fantastic examples, for example, in Crete, where we have created these patches in a systematic way. And we have observed that because you multiply also the ecotones, you multiply the places where different ecosystems are in contact, really you have even better results. So all this comes with additional risks, because while you are enhancing biodiversity, you are also enhancing the risk of contaminating this biodiversity. So everything comes with additional training and additional support. But there is this flexibility and the possibility really to adapt to any sort of cultivation, these ecological infrastructures. For the last 15 years, we have developed an initiative that is called Operation Pollinator, and we have sites a little bit all around the world with this initiative. But since 3 years, we have incorporated all our initiatives into a more systematic and wide plan that is looking in a more holistic way to agriculture. We have basically 3 pillars. One is basically dealing with producing more and better today, and the essence is to look into resource efficiency. And another one is looking at producing more and better tomorrow. And so, I mean, it's ecosystem resilience that is the key element to look at. And the third one, clearly we are producing together with the rural communities, and so, I mean, we take into consideration all the social aspects from training, but also to fair labor that are relevant for these communities. And we have established some targets. For example, for biodiversity by 2020, we want to reach 5 million hectares. And already last year, we achieved 700,000 hectares of multifunctional field margins around the world. This year, we are very close to this figure. We should be around 900,000. We are waiting for our auditors to confirm that all the projects that have been developed are matching the exact criteria. And overall, if we put together the biodiversity and the soil management areas, we have reached, by the end of this year, 4 million hectares of projects. So you can have a look at all this information on our Good Growth Plan website. But the most important element there is that all the data and all the information about our projects are published in open source format, because we believe that clearly we need to share, and we need to make sure that we are all benefiting from the research and the information that is available. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. De Vivo. Since this is the Business and Biodiversity Forum, I'd like to sort of ask you to recap also. There must be business impacts that are expected to be positive and to take place in the actions of your company. So how could you sort of comment on that? You have a lot of activities going on, and you are actually a forerunner in openness and corporate responsibility. For example, the biodiversity crop scheme and so on. So could you touch upon the issue a bit?
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. In reality, all these initiatives that we have are all part of our offers. So since the beginning, we have tried to embed these projects inside the offer. And clearly, we need basically a value proposition for the farmer. That means that when we go to visit a farmer, we cannot talk about land restoration or biodiversity enhancement. He would not understand. But if I'm talking about reducing his costs, because I'm reducing the amount of nutrients that he's losing from his land, something will immediately reconnect my help to a very concrete benefit for the farmer. So this is what we also help basically our sales rep to sell to the farmers, a very tangible value that has probably nothing to do with the restoration or the enhancement, but has always a lot to do with concrete improvements. And more, we try to go there together with value chain partners, people that will buy that production at the end, or that are already marketing sustainability to consumers that are interested in a more sustainable sourcing for themselves. Because this will represent for the farmer an opportunity of additional market access. And this is usually the most important leverage that we can use, because when they realize that they have an additional chance to sell their production, usually they are ready to implement whatever measure, because this is what is going to make also their income more stable for the future.
All right, thank you. Is there a direct question to Mr. De Vivo now from the audience? All right, please.
Thank you. Marion Hammer from Global Nature Fund. The recently published report on the state of nature in the European Union underlines that the intensification of agriculture is the biggest problem for biodiversity, and on the other side, about 50% of our species are depending on extensive agriculture. So my question is how you make sure that the benefits for biodiversity of the multifunctional field margin concept is not eaten by the intensification of agriculture in the field itself.
Usually what makes the land that we use, this marginal and less productive land, not suitable for production is the fact that either it's less fertile or it's difficult to access. Perhaps you cannot go there with your tractor. And so, I mean, we don't compete directly with production. And this is the secret. If you have a 5% of this marginal land on each farm, it is possibly very easy to have an objective of managing, for example, 3%. So a little bit more than half. And without competing with productivity, without competing with intensification, but giving even the opportunity for some crops to have a better intensification. Because, for example, for crops that are really benefited by intensive pollination, through field margins we know that we can grow the productivity of these crops. And we can attract beneficial insects as well. So we can also benefit the productivity and benefit the intensification. I mean, the two things, I know it seems counterintuitive, but they can go together. Not everywhere, not always, but they can go together. Perhaps.
All right, thank you, Mr. De Vivo.